All right, welcome back. We are beginning the algorithm semifinal 1 round. Joining me, we have Scott Wu, who flew in here just to do this. More knowledgeable about this whole competition, this side of the competition than I am, or James Corey. So this is great to have. We also have LG. I'm sorry, what are the other numbers in your name?
5293.
Let's just call him LG, huh?
Yeah, LG.
Awesome. So I'm going to let them take it away. I'm just going to be over here doing the broadcast. Maybe I'll add a little color commentary every now and then, but take it away, guys.
Awesome. What's up, guys? We're going to be watching Top Coder Algorithm semifinal number 1. Now, this is the first of 2 semifinals. We have another semifinal later today. So if you come back at 6:30, I believe, you'll be able to see that one as well. Each semifinal has 8 contestants. We're going to take the top 4 contestants from each semifinal, and those are all going to the final right here tomorrow. We're about to get started. It's going to be a few minutes before we go. We're actually going to be watching. We're going to be sending out a link with the problems live as soon as this gets started. You guys will be able to follow along. We'll be talking through the problems, trying to figure them out. I think, Lewin, you know all the solutions, but I'm kind of coming in blind here, so I'm the guinea pig for these problems very much.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's just talk through our contestants. So again, 8 competitors, and you can see these are just contestants from all over the world. And all of these guys are, I would say, top 50, top 100 in the world. So all really, really excellent contestants. I think any of them could make a really strong upset. I would say the favorites coming in, we're looking at obviously tourists, Gennady Kurtkevich. He's very well known, I think, in the competitive programming community. Probably the greatest competitive programmer of all time, and also past TCO champion. We actually have a couple other past TCO champions in this very round. AC Rush is one of them. Egor is yet another. So going to be a pretty stacked semifinal. Again, top 4 are going to be making it out.
Oh, yeah. And this year we also have 3 first-time finalists. So they're Errichto, Marcin, and MJ Hun. So it'll be interesting to see if they can make it to the top 4 and cause any upsets.
For sure. And still quite a lot to see. And just a little bit about the contest format. Every Top Coder algorithm round consists of 3 problems. We have an easy, a medium, and a hard problem. The contestants have 75 minutes. They get to work on whichever of those problems that they'd like. And by the end of that coding phase, which is 75 minutes long, they get to submit their final code submissions. After that, we're going to have a short intermission, and then we're going to have what we call the challenge phase. And the challenge phase, I think, is the most exciting part, because it's the part where the contestants essentially get to prove each other wrong.
Round 1, the 2018 Top Coder Open Algorithm competition has begun.
Awesome.
The coding phase of the contest will last 85 minutes. The top 3 scores from this round will move on to the finals.
Cool.
Good luck, competitors.
I think, so if you guys just heard that, we are getting started right now with the Top Coder semifinal 1. And again, so 3 problems. What happens in the challenge phase is each of the contestants gets to view everyone else's code. And if they think that their other contestants have made wrong submissions, they get to submit what we call challenge test cases, where they try to break each other's programs, and they get additional points if they're right.
Would you like the link?
Yeah. So we're going to put up the link right now. You guys should be able to see it on your screen. If you just go right here, you'll get to see kind of a little snapshot of all the problems, and take a look. Sorry. Cool. Do we have the scoreboard up right now?
You want to see the scoreboard? Let's
Yeah.
do it.
Oh, we got the big screen too. So yeah, so as soon as people start coming in, people start opening the problems, we'll be able to see, I believe, kind of what everyone has opened. And I think that's kind of an interesting question too. Lewin, do you want to talk a little bit about which problem to open and how that affects things?
Oh, yeah, sure. So, there's 3 different problems. One is worth 250, one is worth 500, and the last is worth 1,000. So they're varying difficulties, and usually you don't have enough time to solve all of them. So it is important which one you open first. It is riskier to open the 1,000 first. Like, it does have more points, but you might not be able to solve the problem. And the 250 is usually the safer strategy, at least for lower variance. Since this is just a semifinal and not for winning the competition, I imagine most contestants would go for the safer strategy. We might see some of the the newcomers try like a more risky strategy just to get to the top four. But
Yeah.
what are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. That the incentives are very different in the semifinal versus the final, right? Because in the semifinal, I think all of the front runners are just doing their best to hold their spot and making sure they don't fall too far behind, and so they're probably going to play it pretty safe. Whereas I think in the finals, people are gonna they're gonna be making moves because they wanna get that first place title. Awesome. Are we off or are we ready to go? Is everything ready?
Should
it's
be.
starting in a second.
It's a different leaderboard this year, so
Gotcha.
it probably will appear once there's some action
Makes sense.
happening.
I think we just got the signal that coding phase is starting. In fact, I see a bunch of people opening their problems. Let's see what we
Sure,
have.
let's go do that. Let's head back.
Okay.
So yeah, it looks like most people started opening the 250.
Yeah.
One person started opening with the 500, and Errichto started opening the 1000.
Right, and that's a pretty interesting split there, especially. So I think we're going to see, and because we've looked at these problems a bit in advance as well. I think we're going to see some pretty early submissions on the 250. I think both the 500 and the 1000 are a little bit tougher nuts to crack, but we're going to see how that changes the strategy as well. For example, Errichto, who opened the 1000. If he sees some really fast 250s, does that change his strategy? One thing that I do want to mention is I noticed that all of these contestants have immediately opened a problem, and I think there's actually interesting strategies that involve kind of just waiting and setting tight for the first couple minutes. One of the most important things here with scoring is time penalty. So when you submit a problem, if you get it right, the score that you get on that problem is based on how fast you solve that problem. So sometimes having a couple extra minutes and getting to see how the other competitors are doing with that problem kind of gives you that time, since the problem time only starts from when you open it.
Yeah.
Exactly. But yeah, with that, do we want to take a look at the 250?
Yes, so I can draw out what the statement is. You should have the link in the stream already, but I can draw it out on the iPad. Can we switch to the iPad?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, so in this problem, you're given a
Do I have the link?
2D grid. It has some certain number of rows and certain number of columns. And you're given a frog that starts at one space. So this frog can move in 4 different directions. It can move up, left, or down, left, up, and right. And it can move in that direction in any number of spaces. And we want to find a path that the frog can jump so that it visits all the squares exactly once. And one additional constraint is that it can't jump in the same direction more than once. The jumps can be any length. So for example, this is one valid path. You can go here, then here, 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 and here. And this is one valid solution for this output. So the question is, given the dimensions of the grid and the initial location of the frog, output any valid sequence of squares it can visit.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. And just a quick recap. So you're given this rectangle with its dimensions, and both of them are between 1 and 50. So it can be as small as a 1 by 1 square. It can be as big as a 50 by 50 grid. And you're given this starting location, I believe, of the frog, and both its row and column that it's currently in. And you want to construct this path using these up, down, left, right directions, with the main constraint that you can never go in the same direction twice.
Yeah. So for example, if we have a grid that looks like this,
Yeah.
this path is not valid because it jumps.
Because you're going
twice.
left twice
Yeah, you're
as
going
soon
left
as
twice.
you start. Yeah.
So you always have to change directions. You can change in the opposite direction, and that's fine. So this path is valid. This one is okay. This one is not okay.
Cool. Yeah, and so this is a really interesting problem, I think, because first of all, there's just a lot of different ways to approach it, but I think also there's a lot of interesting corner cases. I think as soon as you see this problem, I think one thing that comes to mind is, hey, if the number of rows is just 1 or the number of columns is just 1, what happens, right? And so if it's just like a 1 by 1 square, then sure, there's no path to make. You're done. But let's say it's a 1 by 3. And let's say you start here, then you need to know that you got to first go to the end and then go back to the middle. And it's kind of tricky there because instead of 4 directions that you have to work with, now you have only 2.
Yeah, right. So one approach is to try to simplify this problem into a simpler problem, right? So I see you're trying to solve one-dimensional cases, right?
Yep.
So can we generalize this one-dimensional solution to any length board in any starting position?
Interesting. Yeah, and so that kind of the idea being that if we can squeeze it down to the bare bones cases and then kind of build it outwards from there, then what happens? So just an example. Let's try and take a look at a. I'm going to draw a little 3x3 grid, and maybe kind of like work with that and see what we can do. So. And just to make it, I think there's going to be a lot of errors, since I'll just kind of draw the numbers out. So this is, let's say, the starting square. Maybe we go here, and then here. Just kind of picking at random, but hopefully this ends up, yeah, okay. Yeah. So then I have 8 and then 9. This is the order that I jump into the squares. So, right, and so now the question is, with this bigger version, how would I reduce that to a smaller version?
Right, yeah. So how can we use the smaller solution to help in a more systematic way?
Right. So maybe another approach to kind of for the same thing is, again, same grid, same starting point. If I just take what I used right here, then I know that 1, 2, 3 gets me that top row, and then I have a 2x3, and so then what happens there?
So let's just say we jump to any arbitrary space in the same column. So let's just say we jump here.
Cool.
Then we kind of need to solve the same problem on this row again, right? So.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so, okay, so kind of the idea is that we do it row by row, one row at a time.
Yeah.
And let's say, so for this one, we just do 4, 5, and then 6.
Yeah. And then we
and
just
then
jump down one row
This
again.
is 7, and this kind of gives us, okay, cool. So that seems like a nice workable kind of idea to start with. It does seem like there's a lot of edge cases just kind of going back, for example, what happens if we're, here we just happen to start at the top left corner, but what happens if we started somewhere in the middle? How does that change kind of our strategy? So maybe if we can just come down. Yep. And actually, we see a submission from Tourist, 241.85. So again, the 250 is the maximum amount of score that you can get. And so 242, is essentially a very, very fast submission. I think we're looking at 4 or 5 minutes total to solve this problem.
We have another submission.
AC Rush actually came in with another one, 241. There's going to be an interesting question, especially as we get towards the challenge phase, as far as whether these submissions cover all the corner cases, right? And depending on how they implemented it, there might be different corner cases that they feel. Yeah, absolutely. Cool.
Okay,
But yeah, so let's actually get into some of those corner cases right now. So here's a quick example of what we were talking about before. If we go down row by row, what if there's only one? What if there's only one column, right?
Yeah.
Then what we were saying before is kind of we solve this row and then break it down. Well, it's already solved, so we come down to 2, and then we solve that row, which is already solved, and break it down. But now we get this problem, right? Because you can't have this 1, 2, 3 going on like that. So what can we do there?
So one thing we can notice is that solving one column is basically the same as solving one row. It's just transposed by 90 degrees. So we can instead imagine we're solving a 1 by 4 grid, right?
Yeah.
So one solution is doing something like this, right? And if we translate it back to this solution, you get something that looks like this, right? 2, 3, 4.
Cool.
So this way we can solve the problem if we have a solution for the columns, if we only have a single column.
Yeah, and I like that too because it kind of it saves a lot of code and saves a lot of time, right? Because now instead of having these 2 separate problems of solving each row and then kind of going through the rows in order, you're kind of breaking it down into the same problem just in 2 dimensions. And so that saves us kind of that layer of code. Still no more submissions on the 250. I think we just have the 2. I expect to see some more, coming in. I think Taurus and AC Rush are typically, known to be some of the faster ones, but I imagine we'll see some more coming in. So just going from that back to a 3x3, just kind of want to visualize what that would look like. So I'll pick a different starting square. Let's say we go here. Right?
Okay.
And so we solve this row, right? And then kind of your idea is that in the micro, like if we're just thinking about the rows themselves, and I'm starting at, this, then obviously I would do 1 and then 2 and then 3, right?
Right.
So then the next row that I go to is the 2, and so I kind of bring myself straight there. again, I can solve this the row on its own independently.
Right.
And then coming down here, finally I go down to the 3 row, and then again I solve that problem independently. So that seems like it should work. We might have to be careful how we code it with, when the number of rows is 1,
Yeah.
when the number of columns is 1. But yeah, I think there's an interesting question staying near that you pointed out, which is how do we solve each particular row?
So let's just try to solve the simplified version. We talked about how to combine the two solutions into a 2D grid. That's worth talking about how to solve the 1D one.
Yeah.
So let's just imagine I have some grid, and then I have some arbitrary starting point. What can I do? So one strategy is you can do something greedy, right? Like let's just say we just keep jumping to the leftmost cell and then the rightmost cell, or leftmost unvisited cell, then rightmost unvisited cell, and keep doing that over and over again, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So
Can you
we
show
can do like
what?
2, 3, 4, 5.
Gotcha.
This is
Yeah.
valid because it always alternates.
And the idea is that you're always switching left, right, left, right.
Yeah. So there is a problem with this approach. There are some edge cases. So one edge case might be, let's say, I start at this square, right? So what is the leftmost unvisited square? Well, it's here. But if we move to here, then that's bad. So
Right, because
we
even if
actually-
you go all the way to the end, then
yeah,
that
because now
3
we're
is going to
blocked.
be.
Yeah, so we're blocked out from
You can probably. Yeah.
all of these. So what we can do instead is just
You
jump
have
to
to
the
go.
rightmost.
You have to go all the way to the right.
And then
right.
we can do this. So we need to make sure to handle the case where the 1 appears on the edge. But otherwise, we can follow this greedy strategy of always moving to the leftmost or rightmost and alternating doing that.
Okay. Yeah. So that's pretty interesting. So the kind of the idea is like we always have to go left, right, left, right. But in some of these special cases, obviously, if we're all the way on the left, then we can't go left at the start. So instead, we're just kind of doing the right, left, right, left. I think a couple different ways to code that. I think the way that you kind of described it sounds very simple, where you just have the special case on 0.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So now we kind of have each of these different steps. So how would we put that together into a full solution, or how would you approach coding this? What would you code first?
So basically, we have some function that can solve for an arbitrary starting square and a certain row size. So we have maybe a function that looks like this, like int start and int length. And this will return like array of integers saying like which order we visit the cells in, right?
And this is specifically the one-dimensional.
Yeah, so this
Yeah.
is like 1D. And we only need to like basically call this function a few times in our main algorithm to actually get a valid solution.
Yeah.
And implementing this function is also not too hard, as we can like just alternate left, right,
Right.
keeping track inside. So that's how I would approach it, and then that's how I imagine most people would approach them.
And then once you have this kind of 1D black box that gets you where you want to go, now all of a sudden you just kind of have to bring it in for the columns and for the rows, kind of plugging in the inputs that you want. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the contestant screens. I know a couple of you guys are requesting MJ Hun.
Yeah, let's look at him.
So let's see what we have going on. I should mention also we have a couple more submissions on the 250. We have Egor coming in for 227. We have Marchin coming in for 218. So both very fast submissions as well, although a little bit behind Taurus and AC Rush. One thing that I think is actually really, really interesting here is, and we're going to come back to MJ Hun's screen in just a second, is Taurus has actually not opened the 500.
Yeah,
Right,
so
he's
I
not
imagine
opened the
he's
1000.
testing some of the edge cases and making sure it's completely correct.
Yeah.
As we can see, there are a few edge cases, namely the case where there's only 1 row or 1 column.
Yeah.
Or when
Or
the starting
starting
point
all
is
the way on the
something.
left, starting all the way on the right.
So he's
right.
just making sure all those are covered, and
Yeah.
he might be preparing some good challenge cases.
Yeah, preparing challenge cases, exactly. That's a really good point. And I think that also, kind of goes back to what we were saying before about playing it safe, right? I think Taurus is, in many ways, is kind of the number 1 seed of this pool, and he's kind of, he needs something to go wrong for him to not make it out, right? And so I think that's why he's kind of putting in just an extra little bit of caution to make sure that he's getting these problems correct. And as we said that, actually, Taurus just opened the 500. So I believe that was around 7 or 8 minutes, actually, between finishing the 250 and opening the next problem. So,
Yeah. So he's just being very careful at
Yeah.
this point.
whether that was a lot of manual testing, whether that was maybe writing an automatic case generator and validator, we don't really know. Maybe also kind of crafting his own tricky cases as well, right?
So let's go back to MJ.
But yeah, back to MJ Hun.
So it looks like he's still solving the 250.
Uh-huh.
It looks like he's trying to debug the outputs. It's a little bit
Right.
hard to do by hand, I guess.
Right, and I think, yeah, so actually it looks a lot like what we're seeing. So I'm just going to try to draw, the case that he's running right now is a 3x3 grid where you start at the top left, which is funnily enough one of the cases that we were looking at. And I think he's actually doing a very similar strategy to us, which is kind of killing that one row first, then going on to the next row, breaking that down, and then coming out, I believe is what he's doing. So an interesting strategy. I have to imagine the reason he hasn't submit yet is mostly just a kind of a matter of ironing out any of the edge cases, the corner cases. This is the kind of problem, I think, where you can absolutely get all the right ideas for the problem and then kind of trip up on one or two cases, and as soon as you fail one case, you get a 0 for that problem. So very important to get right.
Let's
Should we
move
look
on
at
over
other
to
screens?
Vasil, who's still working on that problem as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
It looks like he's still testing the one-dimensional cases where we
Right,
have
so
only one row.
Yeah, and he's doing the one-dimensional case starting from the left and starting from the right. Pretty
Looks
interesting
like
stuff.
He might be
Apologize,
submitting.
it was this one.
Or it looks like
Cool.
he got those small cases right, so maybe he's slightly wrong, so he's trying to fix them right now.
Oh, I see. Yeah. And you can see that Vasil is actually using, his own editor. So I think he prefers to kind of type in his editor and then copy paste the solutions into Topcoder when he submits. I know people have different preferences around that. Personally, I just code inside the Topcoder editor, but
Oh, and it looks like he
there's
just
lots of ways
submitted.
that work. Cool, another submission. So we have now 5 submissions out of the 6 people that opened this problem. If we can take a look at MJ Hun's screen, actually, and
He
see.
should be pretty close, I feel.
It looks like it too. Cool.
Looks like he's testing the one-dimensional cases, and that does look
Yeah.
kind of correct, I think.
Yep. I think he has both of those one-dimensional cases down, and so he's trying,
So now he's copying it in.
just a row, just a column, starting at the left, starting at the right, kind of all those things. And I actually think we're about to see him submit too.
Yeah, so he passes all the samples. The samples are a little bit weak, so they
The
don't
samples,
really
yeah,
tell you too
right.
much.
So the samples, I think, and this is part of the reason kind of that people are taking their time on this problem is, you look at the samples and you know that they're weak. And
so it
so
looks
finally we
like
have
he
MJ
just
Hun coming in for 200 points. So everyone getting, at least about 200 out of the 250 points on this 250 problem. And I think that actually puts a lot of pressure on Umnik and Errichto, right?
Yeah.
Because, you took a gamble, right? You opened one of the harder problems, and now you're seeing all 6 of the people that opened the 250 have got it, right?
Yeah.
Now, kind of, does that make you want to switch, or does that make you think, hey, I need to pick this problem up before coding time is over?
Yeah, so I think maybe what they're thinking is it takes, at worst case, maybe like 8 minutes or 10 minutes to actually solve the problem, so they can leave that much time at the end if they get completely stuck.
Right.
So they don't actually they can still work on the hard and be confident they can still get the points at the end.
I see. Yeah. So if you're confident in kind of your, the path you're taking, right? If you know that you're going to get the 500 eventually, then maybe all that says to you is, hey, I can leave myself 10 minutes, 15 minutes at the end, open this 250, and it looks like I'll be okay just based on kind of everyone else's feel.
Yeah.
Right. And, again, like lots of variety in the times and the points here on the 250, but all of this is within one successful challenge, right? So as soon as we get into challenge phase, any of these 250s could fail. As soon as one person gets a challenge, they rocket up by 50 points. So it's really going to kind of come down to these 500s and 1000s, and also to who's able to get these problems correct. With that, should we take a look at the 500?
Yeah, we
I'm
can
curious
talk about
actually
the
also to see Taurus
Yeah,
screen as we're.
We can see. He's just reading the problem. Maybe we can see how Umnik is doing on his 500.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, so Umnik has had a bit of time, just since he started with that from the beginning of the problem.
So it looks like he doesn't have any code down.
He's
still.
also and so often kind of what that means is that they're doing cases themselves on
Yeah.
paper. But let's go ahead and let's talk through the problem and kind of.
Okay, so we can talk about the 500. This is like a twist on the classic problem. So let's imagine I have a 2D grid, another 2D grid,
Lots of 2D grids here, yeah.
and some cells are blocked, right? And I want to count the number of ways I can tile this grid with dominoes. So, for example, I don't even know if this is possible to fill in.
So the
Also,
pound signs are the.
these are block cells, and this
Okay, I
is.
see.
Oh, this
Yeah,
is
yeah,
not a
this is
dollar.
gonna.
Okay, so I messed up. But,
Sure.
like
So,
I want to tile the board completely. Maybe I can add another one, and I'll fix it. I don't know. Does it fix it?
I don't think so. Well, okay, let's
whatever.
maybe let's start with like a 2x2 grid. But yeah.
Okay, but anyways, like I can tile this 2 ways, like this.
Sure.
So this is 2 ways to tile the same grid, and basically what the problem is I want to construct a grid so that the number of ways to tile the grid is exactly n, where n is between 1 and 10 to the 18. So
10 to the 18. That's big.
yeah. So and it is construct a grid with exactly
N
n
tilings.
domino tilings.
Okay.
So there are constraints on what your output can be. So you can only have at most 13 rows, and you can only have at most 15,000 cells.
Gotcha.
And one additional constraint is that all the empty cells need to be forward connected.
Okay.
So those are the
They
constraints.
have to be one group. Yeah. So you get to kind of specify the size of the grid, the number of rows, the number of columns. You even get to specify which squares are available and which squares are blacked out. And you're given this number n, and you want to find a grid that has exactly n domino tilings. And n, like you mentioned, is really really big, right? 10 to the 18.
N is really big, and you actually don't have too much space, right? So
Right.
we are limited.
And so kind of you very much have to design a solution that doesn't explicitly count out all the solutions, right? You have to be able to kind of to know what structure is involved in creating a certain number of tilings. So maybe we can just mess around a little bit. So I imagine the n equals 1 solution is pretty straightforward. It's just any grid.
Yeah.
And then I think you drew a n equals 2 as well.
So this is like maybe a solution for n equals 1, right? I have an empty grid with exactly 1 space
Sure.
per domino.
Notably, you didn't even have to do the
Yeah,
block
I mean-
signs. You could just make it a 1x2 if you want.
Yeah.
To. But
Also, like another valid solution is something that looks like this, right?
Right.
So n equals 2. I can do this, right? There's 2 ways to fill it out.
Yep.
I can do this or this, right? These are 2 different ways. So n equals 3. Well, I don't know if we should go one by one.
Sure.
But,
But so any other kind of like good examples for n equals 2 that we can work with? Because I'm just kind of thinking, so n equals 1, obviously just a single tile space works, but there's also other ways to do it, right? Sometimes you're forced to place these dominoes in certain positions, and then you kind of,
Yeah.
you don't have a
so
decision.
if we have something that looks like this, right? We're forced to place a domino like this, right?
Right.
And I don't know what the rest looks like. But
Sure. Maybe there's maybe it's like this, right? And then kind of by the same logic, you're forced to put another one here, you're forced to put another one here. So even though there's kind of lots of dominoes that fill the grid,
Yeah,
only
this is still n equals
only one solution that really works.
Yeah, so this is one solution. So I think one interesting thing is the n equals 2 solution here. We can kind of, so one way to approach problems where you want to construct an exact number of tilings is you try to make the operations like +1 and ×2, right? So
Just to clarify what you mean by that, can you explain a little?
So if there's a way to take a grid with x tilings, and then we can append something to it to get x plus 1 or 2x, then I claim that I don't need to append that many things to make n. Right?
Sure. You're saying if I can turn any like 14 tile solution into a 15 tile solution, any 15 tile solution into a 16 tile solution, eventually that'll work, but maybe that's too big. But if I also have this thing where I can turn a 14 tile solution into a 28 tile solution or something, then that kind of grows fast enough that I can quickly convert that. Okay.
Yeah.
And so that's actually pretty interesting because I think I have in my head a good way to do this 2x that we're talking about, which is just attaching one of these little squares, right? If you put this block, then you put it right in the corner, and it has to be filled one of those two ways, and then it doesn't touch anything else, right? And so that's an immediate 2x.
Yeah, so imagine we have some grid, there's some things in here, and then we attach a 2x2, then this multiplies the number of tilings by 2, right?
By 2.
Because I have to tile this some way, and then I have to tile this, I can tile this 2 different ways. There's 2 and there's x.
Yeah,
So then
and there's never kind of, at least as long as we link it up in the right spot, there's never going to be a way to tile it that goes kind of into, that doesn't have one of these two coverings.
yeah, so we need to make sure that this is still connected to the other empty cells, right? That's
right. Yeah.
one main constraint. But we need to be a little bit careful to make sure that we don't like introduce other ways to tile this. So like if these are all blocked off, then maybe it's fine. Right?
Gotcha.
And then you have, and we do have enough space to add like just this 2x2 because like we have 13 rows to work with.
Right. So so we can assume that, you know, the space is limited, but if our goal is to just add 2x2s, you know, we can add plenty of those without too much fear. Right.
Okay, yeah. So we have a way to make any power of 2. So is there any way we can just add 1 to the tile?
Right. So adding 1 is an interesting operation here because, you know, with all the things that we talked about making a valid tiling, right? It's so much dependent on, you know, each block you put down affects the next block so much, and there's all these constraints on what you can and can't do, that it's interesting to think in terms of, you know, adding exactly 1 tiling. So one thing that comes to mind for me is maybe instead of x plus 1, you can do 2x plus 1. So doubling it and adding 1. I don't know if that's feasible here, but that's also kind of a pair of operations that'll get you everywhere you want to go. So let's take a look at Egor. I believe he is typing out the 500 solution. Don't know for sure yet if this is kind of just an experimental thing or if he thinks he has it for sure.
Yeah, so it looks like he's generating some Fibonacci numbers.
Uh-huh.
So there are actually a few different solutions to this problem. It looks
Okay.
like he's doing one of the more interesting ones that's a little bit harder to explain, but we'll see if he gets it to work. But it does look
Okay.
like it could be on the right track right now.
And just kind of a quick question, you know, once these contestants figure out the solution for this problem, do you think it's a big hurdle to write the code for it? Is that whole another world? Or is it the
so-
kind of thing where once you get it, you get it?
Yeah, so I think the implementation of this problem is actually quite simple. Like the construction is very hard to come up with, but the code could be written in like less than 10 lines or so.
Oh, wow, in
so-
less than 10 lines.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
or like maybe 10 or 20-ish, but like it's pretty short.
Right.
So it can be very fast. And the thing is, like, we do have big sample examples in the problem, so they can be pretty confident in their solution if it works, if it passes a big sample.
I see.
I imagine most of them would still want to like test it out afterwards just to make sure.
Yeah, just some kind of baseline things. You
Yeah.
know, especially to make sure that they don't go over the limit, maybe for the biggest.
Yeah, right.
Biggest case. Okay, and I think that affects, you know, what we're thinking coming into challenge phase a lot as well, just because, you know, if you see that there's these big, strong samples, and everyone knows that, right? Then kind of people are coming in with the expectation that, hey, you know, most of the people who are submitting this, you know, have to know what they're doing. They have to kind of have the cases. It's not as much of a one corner case will get you kind of thing as with the easy problem.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Cool. So I'm curious to take a look at Tourist's screen actually, because at this point he's spent quite a bit of time on this problem. Okay.
Doesn't look like it's
So
code yet.
still in yeah.
Maybe we can look at Errichto and see his progress on the 1000 because he's had it open since the beginning of the round also.
Sure. Yeah. I like that. Yeah, and you know, this is worth mentioning that Errichto at any point he could have opened any of the other problems, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, he sacrifices that time penalty because if he does want to come back, now his time since opening for the 1000 problem is even longer than what it was before. But I think the fact that he hasn't kind of left that and hasn't given up says that he has at least something, right? He has something that he thinks has a chance.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, you know, no reason not to just cut your losses.
Yeah, so it looks like he does have some solution down and he's just writing test harness for it now. I imagine it might be a little bit too slow right now. He might need to optimize it a bit further still, but he might be on
Interesting.
the right track, I think.
Okay, right. And so I think this is kind of a potential issue that we don't really see with the first two problems of this set, where you could have a solution that gives you the right answer, right, and it works and it's correct, but it's just too slow, and it's possible that maybe the samples don't catch that, or maybe there are certain cases that are kind of tougher for your code than others.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're back at MJ Hunt's screen. So it
Yeah.
looks like he's still reading the problem.
Yeah, and I think this is kind of the especially kind of as we're talking about the code itself is only 10 lines long, right?
Yeah.
This
he
is
probably
the kind
won't
of
catch them coding.
right.
It'll be very
This is the kind of problem where you see this kind of blank screen syndrome, and I think mostly what that means is that these contestants are working things out on paper. They're thinking it through in their heads. Much more thinking time than coding time for a problem like this.
Yeah.
One thing I think is pretty interesting is no one. So out of the 6 that submit the 250, I think everyone at this point has been pretty content to just move on. No one came in with a resubmit. No one came in with. I guess besides Gennady at the start for a little bit, no one has spent too much time kind of waiting on their 250. So we'll see how that affects challenge phase. Whether that means maybe everyone's happy and they're confident with their code and they're confident it's going to pass, but maybe it means that they're overlooking a case or two.
Yeah, definitely. Looks like Egor is making more progress so far.
Mm-hmm.
I think he does have the right approach. It might be hard to verify, but he can always test in the arena on the samples and see if it passes.
Right. And I know
but-
you said it was kind of tricky, but can you maybe explain just like briefly what the strategy is? I'm interested to hear why it involves Fibonacci numbers, because I don't know the solution for this either.
Well, I can talk about how he's testing so far right now. So it looks like he's getting it's hard to verify exactly because this has a lot of possible answers, right? So
Right.
He doesn't know if his answer is too high or too low, so it might be hard to adjust. So he might have some up by one bugs
interesting.
that are interesting to debug.
So it doesn't the code, it doesn't tell you
Yes.
the sample tester, it won't tell you, hey, you got this wrong. It'll just tell you this
The
is,
checker will just tell you got the wrong number of tallies. You don't know if it's too much or too little, so you have to
Right.
adjust these +1 -1s a lot. So that looks like what he's kind of doing right now.
I see. And actually
but-
that makes me think, I wonder how the checker itself is written, because, again, we're talking 10 to the power of 18 tilings, right? And so
so-
it's like not something that they can count one by one.
So actually, since this is a classic problem, the way you can write the checkers, we take advantage of the fact that the number of rows is very small, so we have an exponential solution DP that can find the number of solutions, and that's
Right.
how we write the checkers. So
And funny enough, I think that in itself would have also been an interesting problem, if they wanted to ask that. Maybe a little bit more standard, but, kind of if they ask the inverse problem of given a grid to tile it.
So it looks
Yeah.
like Egor is submitting, or he's at least
He's
testing
testing,
in the
yeah.
arena. Because he can't test locally, it says wrong answer, but that's just because the samples don't match what his output is. But he needs to test in the arena to actually run the top coder checker. It looks like he didn't pass the batch test though, so I don't know if he submitted.
I see. Yeah. Yeah.
So he might still be debugging some small things.
We got a good look at the music that he's listening to as well.
Okay.
But so
I can talk about the Fibonacci approach a little bit.
please.
If you can move back to the whiteboard.
Mm-hmm.
So if we look at a 2x(n) board, how many ways can we tile this empty board for n? So for n equals 2, it's 2, right?
Yep, that's
Okay.
that's the standard case that we talked
For
about.
n equals 3, it's
3.
3.
Something tells me you knew that answer already,
Okay, what
but
about 4? 4 is a little bit harder, but maybe we can split it up into smaller problems, right? So we can put a tile like this, and then we have
just
3
back
ways.
to the old 2x3 problem. Yeah,
Otherwise, we can put it like this, and we have 2 ways to do it, right?
I see.
So
yeah,
we get in general f of n is equal to f of n minus 1 plus f of n minus 2,
and that's exactly.
and this is Fibonacci number.
That's the Fibonacci.
So
recurrence.
now the question is, how do you add these Fibonacci numbers together? Turns out it's very tricky, or you kind of need to.
Right, because
Yeah.
multiplying them is easy, right? If you
Yeah,
just kind of
multiplying them is easy.
align them together, it's kind of the same typical problem as choosing kinds of left socks and kinds of right socks. It's just the product of the two.
Yeah.
But adding them is maybe a little bit trickier because it's kind of confining yourself to only doing one of the two.
Yeah. So one way we can do it is if we have a tiling of 2x(n), and then we force a cell in here, this kind of forces the tiling to look like
Oh,
this
wow,
then,
interesting. Yeah.
right? And then this comes out here, right? So if we somehow like block something like this, then if we can somehow say like there's only exactly one thing that will not have something stuck in it, then we can add them together, right? So if we like chain these together,
Yeah, we can add them together in the sense
and
that...
then like you have another one of these, right?
Sure. It's like the total number of solutions is the number of ways to do the Fibonacci left side, and
Yeah.
in that case the right side is fixed, or the
So-
number of solutions to do the right side and the left side is fixed, so it's just the sum of the two.
Yeah, so you need to make sure like you have enough space to like force these correctly. It's a little bit hard to explain what it looks like, but this is kind of what it roughly looks like.
Yeah, yeah. The diagram is already getting pretty complicated. But okay, and I see. And so the 13 rows is kind of is going lengthwise there.
Yeah,
where
right.
you're making that work.
Yeah,
out.
so this is like the number of rows, and then this goes a long way. So the reason why you might want to use Fibonacci numbers is that they also grow exponentially, right? So like you actually don't need
Right.
that many of these blocks to make 10 to the 18. It is a little bit tricky to get these details right. Like you need to make sure the parity is correct. So like you can only use like odd Fibonacci numbers, I think, or maybe even ones. I forget
Oh wow,
which one.
interesting.
But there is a way to make the solution work. It is a little bit tricky to debug, as I said. Like you don't know if your answer is too big or too small. Like you just run the checker and it just tells you it's wrong.
Right.
It is interesting to see if he will get this to work eventually.
Yeah, and so we could potentially even see. I mean, I think if Egor is still stuck with the checker, he might even write his own, right?
Yeah,
He might just solve the inverse problem that we just talked about.
Oh, actually, looks like he
wow,
submitted.
okay, so he's come
he
in.
just submitted.
339 out of 500. Again, not nearly as fast as any of the 250s, but we're kind of expecting that, right? With a much
It's
harder
pretty
problem.
good. It also looks like they gave up on the 500 and opened the 1000 just now.
Oh wow.
So it looks like the 500 was a bit too hard for
Yeah,
him.
and
so.
yeah. In fact, it actually went the other way. You know, we were talking about Errichto maybe switching to an easier problem, but Umnik took the opportunity to switch to a harder problem.
Yeah. So I think like he will leave himself like maybe 10 minutes at the end to look at the easy problem, but he just wants a chance to actually look at the hard problem because maybe the medium problem, like he's already spent so much time on it, it's not
Right.
worth that many points for him anymore. So it's not worth for him
Yeah,
to
so that's actually that's a really good point. I mean, I think even at this point, even if he figures out the medium, you know, spends his time coding it, he might actually end up below some of the 250s just because of the speed, right?
Right,
If
yeah.
you get 200 out of 500 points, well, you know, that's great. You solved the medium problem, but you're not getting as many points as you would like for it. So Umnik kind of hoping that the hard is more
approachable.
of his style, more in his court.
It looks like Egor is still not opening at 1000, so he's probably going to test his solution a bit more on the 500. It looks like he is
AC
writing,
Rush?
or who's, oh, this is AC Rush.
Yeah.
So it looks like he is coding the 500 right now.
Yeah. And so
So-
you mentioned there were a couple other, I guess, techniques. Some of them maybe a little bit easier to code. Do you think? I know it's early yet, but do you have a sense of which
So it looks like
technique he's trying to go for?
I mean, he's only putting some debug output right now, so it's hard to tell what he's doing right now. We'll see. So there's a solution using like powers of 2 also, like the binary representation of n.
Right.
It is also pretty easy to code, but we'll see which approach he'll take.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. Do you want to talk through a little bit? I don't know how easy it is to explain, but maybe to explain how the binary solution could work.
Okay.
And is it the x plus 1 and 2x, or is 2x plus 1, or some other kind of?
Yeah, so it's actually a little bit different, I think. You do kind of add one. So if you switch back to the screen, we can chain these together if we have something like this. Right.
Okay. Oh, interesting.
Okay,
I think
so
I see
this
where
is
this
like-
is going.
If this is n times, you can get 2 to the n, right? Okay, so now how can we force one more tiling? One way is
You can put a
So
a
basically-
new thing at the start of the end.
yeah, we
and
want
that
to like
link
be
it
able
all
to
together.
force. If we put something here, then like we force exactly one tiling for the rest of these.
Yep,
right?
because the bottom one has to go there, the top one has to go there.
So what
Every
we
single
need-
move, yeah.
Yeah, so what we need is something that looks like this then that goes around, and this adds exactly one more toweling, right?
I see. And the reason that you need this pipeline is because you need it to.
You still need it to be valid toweling, right? So like you go all the way across,
Yeah, and so it's kind of like the thing that's actually
and then these are all blocked.
changing into two options is the pipeline, right? If the pipeline is shifted by one, then all of a sudden these squares all land at like a one-off position and there's no freedom.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's the other way around, then they get the power of two. Okay.
Yeah, right.
So this gives you a power of two.
So this
plus
gives you to the n plus 1.
one.
So how do we get more power to 2 in here? So actually, we can add bridges in between here, right? So
This is way too high level.
yeah,
Okay.
it is a little bit hard to like come up with, but I think if you add this bridge, what happens? So I can either force this square, right, or I can force this square here. If I force this square here, then these are still free, right?
Yeah, it's like the sum of the two. It's like 2 to the k plus 2 to the n minus k or
Yeah,
something.
right. But I can just add a lot of these bridges here, like based on the binary representation event, and then that will give me like all the powers of 2 I want.
How do you deal with the 2 to the k to the n minus k? Is there a good?
Or this is still 2 to the n, right? It's still 2 to the n.
Yeah.
So 2 to the n if the cycle is like correct, plus like 2 to the k if like the cycle is in here, or like plus like 1 if the cycle is in here, right?
Oh, I see.
So like you still get like the sum of powers of 2.
I understand. Yeah, because you're specifically poking into the right.
Yeah, you're
bridge
poking
of the
into
two.
like
Yeah.
So like this is length k and then this is length n, right? So then you can get something that looks approximately like that. And there are some details to work out. I don't know if this is exactly right, but
Yeah.
this is like the right idea for this
Yeah,
problem.
I understand. Yeah, and this is a very tough problem because I mean, you know, obviously, like understanding the solution is tough, but coming up with the solution is something totally different, right?
Yeah,
Because
so it is definitely very
you know,
hard to
seeing
come up
all
with
this
this.
pipeline kind of when you've just been told about these dominant tilings, you know, in say 20 minutes, 30 minutes is not an easy task at all.
Yeah, so I think one thing that makes this a little bit easier is that you have a lot of control over what shapes you can make. So you don't actually need to know how to solve the general problem with dominant tilings. So that's the reason why we look at maybe like 2 by n or like 2 by 2 squares, because we know exactly how to tile those and we just try to compose those together. So that is
Right.
one approach to do it. It is a little bit hard to combine them, and like it does require a lot of creativity. So we'll see if more people are able to solve this problem.
Yeah, yeah, and so you know, kind of, yeah, for sure. And so you're not required to give the shortest solution, right? But you're just required to give any solution, and that kind of lets you. It makes it almost like a sandbox, right? Where anything that you can find can work, and I imagine that's why there's so many different solutions that you guys found. But yeah, there's lots of different ways to make it work. A lot of it, some are easier than others. Maybe some are easier to visualize, some are easier to code. But there's lots of ways to get that exponential going and to get that number representation.
Yeah, definitely. So at this point, I think we could take a break if you wanted.
Yeah. So I think I should mention, Egor opening the 1000. So looks like I would say we have 3 people actively working on the 1000. I assume Omnic is also prioritizing that one. Errichto, still on that. The rest are on the 500. I think, like Lewin mentioned, we'll probably see those two who skipped the 250 at the start coming back to it at the end. So we're going to take a brief break right now. We will come back just before the end of the coding phase. We'll get to catch any of the kind of the last minute submissions, and then we'll watch challenge phase and talk through that as well. We'll also, save some time to talk about the hard problem. So, we'll be leaving the scoreboard up in between. So stick around. We'll see you soon.
All right, and we will be scrolling through the competitor screens as well. We know you want to see that as well. So we'll do that during the break, and we'll be right back. All right, we decided to come back on. We were doing some commentary here behind the scenes, and we thought it'd make for some good show. So let's turn it back over to Lewin and Scott.
Yeah, a couple of fireworks in the few minutes that we've been out just watching here. Big one is Errichto came in with a 1,000, and then we also see Taurus and AC Rush coming in with 500. The two 500s that came in obviously a little bit slower than Egor's, a little bit lower points, but still enough to put them solidly ahead of the Soul 250 group.
Yeah.
So what do you think with that 1,000-point question? Do you think people will start attacking that one come the challenge phase, or?
Yeah, and so that's an interesting question, because I think some of the people behind are going to have to, right? Because they're again, if you're not in the top 4, you're not making it. You're going home, right? So especially, for example, if you're one of the slower 250s and you're not able to get the 500 in time, that's kind of sometimes that's kind of the move that you have to make, even if you don't have a case that you're sure is going to break them. I think another thing that's pretty interesting is just kind of who's decided to work on what problems. So we were saying earlier, Nick, left the 500 and went to the 1,000. I think one thing that's pretty interesting is Errichto immediately after the 1,000 is now working on the 250, and I think that's a good call. Just kind of, I think from his perspective, judging from the board, the 500 looks like a tough problem, or at least like a problem that takes a long time, right? Whereas 250, everyone at least has a submission in, and if you nail at 250, 250 and 1,000 is going to be good, no matter what happens during the rest of the 20 minutes.
Yeah, and it looks like Nick is starting to code the 1,000, so we'll see if he does make it at the end of the round. It does take a little bit of time to code, so maybe you can come back in a few minutes and see if he'll come closer.
You mentioned also that some of these 1,000 solutions might be kind of too slow, and there might be tough cases that break them, even if they get through the samples, or even if they, they're getting the correct answers.
Yeah. So for the 1,000, I think the samples are relatively strong in terms of correctness. There is one max case sample, but
looking
you
at
could have
Errichto testing right now, he might have a 250 coming in. This is going to be a really fast one if he's ready to go.
So one thing is he might want to test a little bit more. I'm not sure if he will, but we'll see if he submits soon. But that would mean he would have the fastest solution if he submits within the next couple or minute or so.
Right. Yeah, and obviously it's. Yeah, I think that's a good point that you're making. That sure, it's cool to have the fastest 250, but again, if he's confident in his 1,000, all he needs is a positive score here.
Yeah.
Maybe going as fast as you can isn't the right play.
Yeah, looks like he's submitting now. So
here we go, 242. So he is.
So now he's in first.
Yeah, not only the fastest 250, but also in first place thanks to that 1,000 pointer. So only person sitting on top with a 1,000 pointer. We've seen a submission from everyone now except Nick, who is, as we mentioned, coding the hard problem.
Yeah.
And this is looking like kind of if things play out as we expect with the coding phase, I think this is gonna look like a really interesting cutoff for coming into challenge phase, right? We're thinking about top 4. Right now, top 4 is just the people who have more than the 250, but obviously a couple more of those are gonna come in, and we're gonna see people like right around the boundaries between 4th and 5th. Or between 5th and 6th and so on, where they just need one challenge to potentially get their spot.
Yeah, and it also looks like AC Rush is not opening in 1,000 yet, so that'll be interesting to see what he's doing. I think he might still be testing a solution, because when we last looked at it, it looked like he was doing something random.
Right. Not random as in chose a weird path, but literally, has his code has a randomized algorithm where it's just trying to add or subtract squares randomly until he gets the solution that he wants.
Yeah, so it looks like he's just stress testing a little bit more. I'm not sure if he's still debugging some specific things, so maybe I don't think he'll have time for the 1,000, so he's probably just banking on the first 2 problems on passing, and he's just making sure his 500 is covering all the cases now. Yeah, so it looks like he's stress testing, and they all passed so far. So maybe he'll be more confident now.
Right. Yeah, and that's So 20 minutes left. You're really starting to think about exactly how much time this is going to take you, right? How much time is the 1,000 going to take you? Well, from the people who have worked on it, not any less than 30 minutes, right? And you don't have 30 minutes. So at some point you gotta just kind of make sure to lock in what you have.
And here we got Martin. Right on the bubble.
Right on the bubble, yeah. A lot could move, right? He could get a challenge. He could solve the 500. someone else ahead of him could fail. Lots of different ways for him to move forward. Obviously, if you're Martian, you want to get as many problems as you can now to get yourself in a good spot for challenge phase.
It looks like he might be submitting soon, or he's batch testing, but he fails on the samples right now.
Okay.
So maybe he has a little bit more time to go.
Right.
But it looks like even if he gets to 500, he still needs some challenges to make it to the top 4 because he is behind.
Because his time is behind.
Yeah.
And but we were saying that, especially with all these fast 250s, right? If you got this really fast 250, it's really possible that you missed a case or two, right?
Yeah,
and I think if he gets to 500, he's not settled, he's still on the bubble, but he's at the point where if anybody fails anything ahead of him, they slip below.
Yeah.
Right? So,
right.
not the most comfortable spot to be, but you still have a really good shot. And plus, you could just make it happen yourself, right? You could just get that challenge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right.
I love that he is actually looking at this. Martian is looking at this his text box grid. He's just literally filling out. Here's my dominoes.
Oh, is this what you guys were drawing earlier?
Yeah. And he's
yeah, he's just making sure maybe
out.
that's only one configuration. Because maybe he's appending these 2 grids together. Looks like he's hard coding some things like this grid in particular. So
I saw something that he was doing the square root of 5 in his code, which I assume relates to Fibonacci numbers.
Yeah, it looks like it might be Fibonacci, so we'll see.
But yeah, interesting to work with decimals, honestly. And
yeah, I mean, you could just compute all of them, so I don't know what his approach is exactly. It looks like he has 2 different fixed grids, and he might be appending them together in some way.
Long W equals square root of 5 plus 1 all over 2. Usually not what you want to see in an integer problem, like working with these decimals. But, maybe he's got something going here.
Yeah, we'll see.
We do have a lot of MJ
it
Hoon
looks like
fans.
Egor's resubmitted his 250, so...
Egor's a resubmit, okay.
Yeah, so his submission's only worth 75 now, so he probably missed one of the small cases, and he just resubmitted.
And 75, 30% is the minimum points that you could get from this question. So actually, at this point, if Egor wanted to resubmit again, he's actually not losing any points.
Yeah, and this might actually incentivize other competitors to look at the 250 more closely because they noticed somebody resubmitted. So we'll see if anybody goes back to it.
That's kind of interesting, right?
Right, and that's his own whole strategy play, right? Do Egor now, presumably, I mean, if he found something that breaks his code, he's got a couple good corner cases to try on other people.
Right.
At the same time, maybe other people are thinking, hey, Egor is good, and he's resubmitting, so maybe that means that I need to take another look at my 250 as well.
It looks like Errichto opened the 500 pretty fast too, so I don't know if he'll make that much progress on it.
Yeah, I noticed that. I think that's interesting because we were just saying, when you're at the top, you want to just kind of secure your position there. Yeah. And Errichto, instead of checking the 250, I think he's opting to go try to solve the 500, right? And obviously, if he gets all 3 problems, then it's a no contest. But if he has some bugs, especially if we're thinking worst case scenario, maybe he has some bugs in the 250, maybe he has some bugs in the 1000. Yeah. And if he's not able to get the 500 in time, then he could get into this sticky spot where he's failing more than one.
Yeah, definitely. Maybe we can go back to Nick.
Sure. I just wanted to touch on MJ Hoon. I know we have a lot of his fans tuning into Twitch. They wanted to see his screen. Unfortunately, we haven't seen much action from him in the past 20 minutes or so.
Yeah, looks like he's still
thinking
through the 500 on paper. Yeah. Possible we'll see. Like you mentioned, Lewin, I think the code for this problem, if you get it the right way, is not that long. So
looks like Martian submitted.
Martian in with the 500. So this is wrapping up actually to be a really interesting end of
he moves ahead of Egor.
Challenge phase. Yeah, and so just as we said, Egor holding the first place for quite a long time is actually now on the bubble in 5th. So if everything holds as it is now, which to be fair, it never does. If everything holds as it is, he's in 5th and he's eliminated.
Who'd you guys want to see?
Nick. Let's look at Nick's progress on 1000. So he might be getting closer now because it is getting at that point where he might want to think about switching to 250. Just to get those points, but maybe he'll just stick with it all the way to the end just to make sure he qualifies.
Right, and just to thought experiment to kind of think through, let's say you come in, you're Nick, right? If you come in with a 250, what does it take for you to make it to the next round, right? So if you're fast enough, you get past Fastil and MJ Hoon. Mm-hmm. You have to beat 2 more people, and where do you expect that to come from?
Yeah, so ideally, what he'll do is open the 250 right before the coding phase ends, so he can read it during intermission and maybe come up with challenge cases. In that case, maybe he can get 2 challenges, and if he possibly gets the hard, then maybe that's enough to move past. It still looks like he's making some more progress on it.
Right.
but-
So right now, if he gets the hard, we're looking at 534 is what it's telling us.
Yeah, we'll move him to second.
And that's good enough to just edge out a lot of these people with the 250, 500. But again, this is really volatile, right? If it takes him 5 more minutes, if it takes him 10 more minutes, he may very well just be right below the pack.
Looks
As
like
we're
he's
saying
testing.
that
but
he
it's
fails
incorrect.
test case 2. Yeah.
Yeah, so he's failing some cases.
Yeah. For what it's worth, sometimes it's better to be failing test case 2 than to only be failing the
Last
big
one,
case,
yeah.
and then
The
it's
last
like
one's always hard to
the
keep
answer is
up.
like a billion, and you have no idea what to do. Right? It's nice to have a small case that breaks, and maybe that means you have a simple bug that you can just fix and be good to go.
I don't see much from Vasil, so let's just check on in with him.
Yeah, it looks like he's coding right now the 500. I'm not too sure
What's going on here? Yeah. No, this is definitely.
There are a lot of different approaches for this problem, so
Yeah,
a lot of
and,
different ways.
and this is the time to make moves, right?
Yeah.
And so I think, especially, we've seen a lot of people who have spent a lot of time on this 500, and if push comes to shove and you've got 10 minutes left and you still don't know what to do, sometimes you have to just kind of implement what you have, see where it goes. Errichto's 250 is not completely safe.
Yeah, so since he solved it so fast, I think there is the chance that it could get challenged pretty easily. And actually,
It
his
looks like he
1000
still might be working on it. Is it that one or?
So I think,
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
yeah, so it looks like he gave up on the 500 and is going back to his 250 and making sure it's correct. Looks like he's still editing, so maybe he did find a bug, but he's waiting to resubmit. If he does fail the 250, he only has 426, which is still enough to be in 4th place at the moment.
Which actually also puts him right in front of Egor. Right?
Yeah, and it puts him in just at the cusp, where somebody could challenge and get above him. So he does need to be a bit careful here.
Right. Yeah, and that's going to be interesting if Errichto, if he either resubmits a 250 or if he fails a 250, we're going to see actually a lot of people in between this 400 and 500 point range. I think basically everybody. We talked about Umnik coming in with a 1,000 at the end of the contest, also around that range. If either MJ Hoon or Vassal has a 500 submission,
It looks like
same
Errichto
story.
is testing some small cases now, so he might be resubmitting soon.
Yeah, pretty funny. We could see a world actually where all 8 of our contestants are right in the same 400 or 500 point
Yeah,
range.
so that means that people are only within 1 or 2 challenges of each other, which
Yeah.
will make it interesting.
And that's what gives us some fireworks to watch.
So I have a question for the ones still working on the 500. Maybe they're close to solving that. Is it still part of the strategy to at least open up the 1,000 to read it, just to see if you could
Yeah.
challenge it, or is it something that you're just I'm not going to challenge that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think so. As far as solving the 1,000 yourself, definitely from the scoreboard, it doesn't look like a problem that you can do in 10 minutes. One thing that's nice is you get 5 minutes in between. So after the coding phase, we all take a 5-minute intermission. During that time, you can open, I believe, you can open problems even if you haven't opened them.
No, I think you have to open them during the round, which
Okay,
is
sure.
a
So you
weird
squeeze it and
limitation.
open in
Yeah,
the last
you-
10 seconds,
Yeah,
right?
it's like-
And then
have
you
to remember
get
to do that.
you get to kind of read it then.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, people often use those 5 minutes to construct the test cases that they need. And yeah, I mean, definitely that's the time to do it.
Yeah.
Well, let's go see what Egor's up to.
It looks like he might just be thinking about one of the problems, maybe, or it doesn't look like he's actively working on anything. So,
What's funny actually is, so I'm looking and he has it sorted, so you can sort the results table however you want, by the rating, by the score, whatever. Usually you see it by score, right?
Yeah.
First, second, third. He has it sorted by the speed of their 250.
so
So I think
it's
that's kind of going off the same theory that we had earlier.
He's
that,
probably gonna
hey,
hack all
if
of
these
that.
guys submit the 250 in 5 minutes, they might be missing something.
I was looking at some social media.
Now he's listening to his music. Yeah.
He's like, I'm
so,
just
kind
hanging
of
out
the
now.
two essential pieces that you have to have: the
he's
speed
just
of your
relaxing.
250, and yeah.
Yeah, he
Interesting.
might just be taking a break because
He
he
thinks
probably
he's
doesn't have time
gonna
to get it
crush the
done.
challenge round, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think he knows his 1,000 is a no-go. He's happy with his 250 and 500,
Interesting.
and then maybe, like you said, he has the cases already. he's just waiting to see. And I think that's funny too, because it means that Taurus and AC Rush are the first ones that he's going to open if he goes with that strategy.
Right. It looks like MJ is off to the races now. Maybe he.
Okay, so it looks like he's trying to factor the numbers and multiply them somehow for the 500.
Four.
So he's looking at the lily pads code also, which is interesting.
Oh,
Yeah,
lily pads.
he's running some factoring. He's also running some.
Yeah, I guess he might be looking for challenges. Oh, it looks like Umnick
Wow,
submitted.
a couple-
and
so-
Taurus submitted too.
Taurus just came in with 837 on the 1000. Again, obviously, always possible that this is just Taurus being Taurus, right? But
What does
also,
that mean?
also possible that hey, this guy solved the 1000 faster than most people solved the 250.
Yeah,
you have to wonder if
2 times faster.
is
almost.
that solution
Actually,
valid,
legit.
right?
Looks like Errichto also resubmitted to 250 in this time, so he has slightly lower points. But
Oh,
if he
Richter, yep,
resubmitted, yeah.
resubmit on the 250. Okay.
Um, And yeah, Umnick finished 1000 and he opened the 250 almost immediately after, so maybe he can finish in time. 8 minutes
Right.
it was enough, I think, for some of the competitors, so he might be able to make it in time at the end.
Wow, this scoreboard almost flipped it.
It's moving all over the place. I think Umnick, it's going to be an interesting question whether he gets his 250 submission in time. It's also going to be an interesting question if he does, whether that's going to pass, right?
Yeah.
Again, this is another one of those times where you're time crunched, and it's hard to go through all those cases when you have 6-7 minutes to think about the whole
definitely
problem.
does not have downtime.
Yeah,
Right.
I can say personally that I tried to
There we
code
go.
the 250 in 6 or 7 minutes and failed.
So, like you mentioned, he started on a harder problem. He knew once he saw people submitting that it was something that could probably be done in that amount of time, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he
Deep in
took a
a
risk,
sense.
and if his 1000 is correct, so far it looks like his risk paid off. He's going to try to get himself a little insurance by getting the 250.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a big what if.
Actually, you know what?
looks like
we have
AC
about
Rush.
7 minutes
Oh.
left. I didn't know
Yeah.
if you wanted to hit on that last question. Did you?
Oh, the last question explanation?
Oh, yeah,
we
great
can talk about it. Yeah, also it looks like AC Rush and Marchin just opened the 1000. Maybe
Oh.
just to look at what the problem is,
Just
because
looking
so
at the
many
problem.
people just submitted, so maybe
Yeah.
they want to think of like tricky cases or something.
Right. So if it's just 1,000, maybe not worth worrying about. But
And now
3
it's three
people,
1,000s.
especially an 837, now you're starting to wonder. I also I wonder if maybe they think they could potentially get it
In like
as
6 minutes.
fast as Kennedy
Yeah,
did.
it does seem
if you see
a
an
bit
837, then hey, that could be me.
Yeah. Yeah, so we can talk about the 1000. So in this problem, you're given a directed graph. And it can have cycles or whatever. And you want to color the nodes of the graph with colors from 1 through n. So there's n nodes. And then you first choose like color with k colors.
So you get to choose K.
Yeah, you get to choose k. K between 1 and n. And for example, let's just say maybe something like this. Right. And then I want for every I between 1 and k minus 1, there is an edge from color I to I plus 1. So this means at least 1.
any edge, yes. You could
Yeah,
have
so
lots
like
of
for
nodes.
example, this is fine, right? This satisfies this condition. If this is also 1, this is also fine. So this is another valid coloring, right?
Yeah.
So like in this group, like we need at least 1 edge to like this group here, right? The colors, the nodes of each color don't need to be connected. The graph doesn't need to be connected. It can kind of just be arbitrary.
Uh-huh. Right. Yeah. So just to redraw a little bit, maybe in a way that's hopefully a little. I think this is the graph you had.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this was the example I believe that we had. But yeah. So the idea is that this gets filled because we have at least 1 edge from a 1 to a 2. We could actually make this. I believe we can make this 1 here a 3. And still be good to go.
Right.
Because now we have this 2 to 3. We also have the 1 to 2 edges. In fact, we could even make this a 4.
Yeah, you can make this 4.
So these are all different valid options. Now the question is, how many colorings are there that are valid?
Yeah, so count the number of colorings. So, and n is pretty small, n is only up to 15. So this suggests like an exponential approach to this problem.
Right.
So one way we can think about is like dynamic programming based on like which nodes we've already colored. So like if we know which nodes we've already colored, we need to also know like which nodes are in the last group, right? So we have some mask. So this is like node 1, 2 through n. And we say like this is like 0, 1, or 2. So like 0 is uncolored, 1 is colored, and 2 is like last color use with highest color.
Right.
So then basically how we can expand this mask is we choose some subset of 0 colors.
And then you just
And
bitmask
then-
verify that it's.
We just make sure there's at least one edge from the 2 group to this subset, and then we update our DP based on
So
that.
it's kind of like you move forward one color at a time, and you always have this subset. Like, here's a subset of nodes that you have right now. Here's a subset of nodes that I just added.
Yeah.
And keep going from there. One thing I think is pretty cool about this this approach is you actually don't need to know what color you're on right now.
Yeah, you don't need to
That's
actually
not
keep
part
track
of
of
the
the
state.
color. Like, you only need to keep track of things that are the highest color. You don't need to keep track of exactly what number it
Because
is.
you've already taken care of the first 4 colors, 1, 2, 3, 4. It doesn't matter if it's 4 or 6 or whatever. You've taken care of all of this, and now it's just moving on to the next color, the next color.
Yeah. So the problem with this approach is that it's 4 to the n. So the way you can see that is like for a given mask, there's 3 to the n states. And then I iterate through 0 subsets.
And you're going through all those. Yeah.
So then this becomes like 4 to the n because there are 4 states that each
You
cell
kind of
can
have
be
a
in.
3, which is like the things that I'm
So-
about to take as my next color.
And then you have like some subset of these, right? Maybe. So like these are maybe like 0 primes saying like I'm going to take these next or consider to take these next. And you can see that each number can be in 4 different states. So there can be 4 to the n states. So the main difficulty of this problem is trying to reduce it down to 3 to the n. It is, the details are a little bit complicated. That's why it's a hard problem.
And we're saying that the 4 to the n is close. I mean, I think that
Yeah.
the final test data. I'm sure that kind of all the writers did a really good job to make sure that nothing could sneak by. But 4 to the n with n is 15. That's around 1 billion, right?
Yeah.
Which is tight. But if you have some heuristics, you might be able to get by. And that's what we're saying might be happening with some of these 1,000 submissions, right?
Yeah,
That maybe they
so-
have kind of something that's a bit of a heuristic and not really something that's guaranteed to be fast.
Yeah, so given that Tur submitted pretty fast, maybe he found a fast heuristic. Maybe he did find the fastest approach too. Who knows? We'll just see in challenge phase if anybody does try to challenge him or not.
Let's see what he's up to right now. He has submitted to everything. What does it look like he's doing here?
He's looking at
So
the
it's
1,000.
looking at 1,000.
Yeah.
He's probably just making sure that it looks correct. But it looks like he has the 3 to the n approach right now. At least just skimming the code. So maybe
Yeah.
it is fast enough.
Cool.
But we'll see.
And so
if,
this is just his kind of problem then if he just got it
yeah,
that
maybe
fast.
he just.
We are
realized
under
it's wrong.
1 minute at this point.
One thing I want to mention, so with the 2 contestants with just the 250, Vasil and MJ Hoon, it's an interesting spot for them because, again, definitely,
Yeah.
by all means still doable, but even if they come in with the 500 right now, they're going to be falling below the other people with the 250, 500, even Egor with the resubmit, right?
Yeah.
So what that means is kind of, they have to hope, and I think we're starting to think potentially that challenge phase is going to be a bloodbath, right? They have to hope that a lot of these submissions ahead of them are going to fail, right? And hopefully, if they get a good share of those challenges too, that's enough to put them ahead, right? Because
They want us to show Umnik, who has just submitted the 250.
So he might. Oh, he just submitted. Oh.
so now we actually have all 8 submissions on the 250. I think it's an interesting question to see how many will pass.
Yeah.
Personally, I would guess
Or did he actually submit?
5 or
did
6.
he?
Voting phase is now complete.
Oh no, he didn't.
So he compiled.
Compiled.
Oh, he compiled. Okay.
The challenge phase of the competition round will begin shortly.
Yeah. So it looks like the conditions for the bottom 2 are. It doesn't look very likely for them to advance. They do need to get a lot of challenges, and they need to hope that the other 250s or 500s.
Should we be looking at Egor right now, who may the challenging.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Or
I think he's.
it's intermission right now. So
I'm
we'll-
sorry.
We'll not see anything.
The challenge begins. Yes, that's right. You get a 5-minute break. So time to breathe. Time to get your thoughts together.
Yeah.
What you're gonna do here.
And challenge phase is always tricky, I think, at TCO, right? Because, even if let's say you're really good at challenging at the online rounds, right? Everyone here is, like we said, the top 50, top 100 in the world. You can see all their names in red. Most of them are targets. So you have to imagine that most of the kind of the pitfalls, most of the traps that people will fall for that maybe you get to capitalize on in an online round, those aren't available to you, right? Like if these guys are making mistakes, they're gonna be pretty subtle mistakes. They're gonna be bugs that aren't the easy to catch kind.
Yeah, definitely.
Plus, you're competing with all of the other 7 people to get this challenge too, right? And
Yeah,
everyone here,
so you need to be fast. Yeah, I think right now it might be unlikely that the 500s fall, given that the samples were pretty strong. The
Yeah, I believe that
250s
too.
are the most likely to fall, so maybe we'll look out for those.
I imagine with the 500, the only way you could fail is if your thing, if it's too big for a large N, or maybe if you snuck a randomized one by.
Yeah, right.
But for the most part, like you said, yeah, once you got it, you got it. 250, I think, very much up in the air. 1,000, also some potential there.
Yeah.
I have to imagine some people will try to challenge the 1,000 because they're gonna have to, right?
Yeah, right.
Especially some of the lower people, essentially they're betting that these 1,000s are going to fail if they want to make the top 4, and if you have to rely on that anyway, you might as well just go for it and try to be the one to bring them down.
Yeah.
So challenge phase starting in 2.5 minutes. I expect we'll see a lot moving right at the beginning. Sometimes contestants like to actually just go and blind challenge. They have one case that they feel like is really good, and they'll just like, all right, I'm just gonna try it on everyone and see what happens.
Yeah.
Because you could lose all those points. But if you're right at least some of the time, then you grab those challenges before anybody else can.
Yeah. And it looks like I think Egor might be most likely to try that strategy, given that he is more or less behind and
he's
he
on
has
the
been
ball.
thinking
Yeah.
about it for a while, probably. So we'll see if there's any challenges that come out within the first 2 seconds.
And we have about 2 minutes left until we get there.
Okay.
Yeah, so really interesting. I mean, just kind of pre-challenge phase distribution, right? We have one person who has all 3 pumps, tourist, right? We have someone who has the hard and the small, the hard and the easy, right? One person who has just the hard, Nick. A few with the easy and the medium, and then a few with just the easy.
It's pretty spread out.
Yeah, it's not it's not a typical kind of like bell curve. I think there's lots of different things that people are trying out.
Yeah.
All right, they want us to show the screens now, but there shouldn't be much to show. There's still in minute 30 left until the break. So
Yeah, totally agree. I think once we do get started, Egor is probably the one to watch, just because we've seen him, break down the 250 submissions.
Right.
We've seen him kind of just waiting and, it looks like not really testing his code, but more presumably, figuring some stuff out on paper.
So when you were competing this 5-minute break, what are you doing at this point?
Very much, making test cases. So I'm writing myself a generator, to give me these kinds of cases, to make random cases and so on. Also, obviously, you have to look at the scoreboard to see where you are. It's a huge difference whether you're in 4th or in 5th, right? Because if you're in 5th, one successful challenge is all it takes to move up. If you're in 4th, one wrong challenge is all it takes to drop down. So that's kind of something that, especially as the challenge phase goes on, some of these submissions are going to fail, right? And so your spot is going to move, and so you kind of have to always be ready to respond to that.
Well, it'll be exciting. We're going to tune back in 30 seconds. I think probably the first person we're going to go to is Egor, seeing as he was one of the first people to submit that 250. However, he went back in. Something might have clicked and thought.
And the first on the 500 as well, right?
Yeah.
He was holding that top spot way ahead of everyone for quite a while.
Right.
Shall we switch over?
Yeah, let's switch over to
Sure
the screen.
thing. 4, 3, and 2, 1.
All right.
Okay, looks like
You go
it's
straight for
going top to
Gennady.
10-minute long challenge
Right,
phase
looks like-
of the algorithm competition has begun.
bottom. Okay, so it looks like he's not blind challenging.
Yeah,
actually
he's
reading the
taking
solutions.
his time. I don't see any blind challenges yet.
Yeah.
So I guess these contestants are being more sensible than I would be. He is going through. I think he probably has a couple specific things that
Yeah,
he's
that's
looking
what
for.
it seems.
He has 2 or 3 cases and he just wants to check get the checkboxes down. Do you have this? Do you have this? Do you have this? And if you go that way with really targeted things, you can actually go through the code pretty fast.
Yeah, so it looks like he's just skimming everything pretty fast.
Yeah, most of these programs aren't too long, so.
And we have to mention that he is currently in 6th place, so he does need these challenges.
He needs at least 2 challenges to move up to 4th right now. So.
Yep. And then obviously things can change as well.
Yeah. Yeah, we can switch to other screens, I guess.
Sure. Who do you guys want to check out?
I'd be curious to take a look at Errichto, actually.
Okay.
Errichto is another one of those that's kind of on the on an interesting spot where he could fail the 250. He could,
Yeah, so Errichto also did resubmit in the middle of the contest, so he might have a challenge case in mind that he's looking out for.
Plus, if he fails the 250, he's also kind of in that really interesting spot.
Yeah, the
where,
426. Yeah.
So he has to really think like, if I'm going down on the 250, I have to take a couple people with me, in order to get my spot, right?
Interesting.
So I see a defense.
So
I
looks
don't
like
know
somebody tried to hack
who
AC
it's
Rush.
from.
It might be Egor, I'm not sure. Because he was just looking at it recently. Let's see if any points drop.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Oh no, it
so
looks like tourist
it's,
challenge.
It's Gennady, yeah.
Oh
so,
yeah, so.
So
He's got some points to mess with.
yeah, he's got.
Yeah,
a
maybe
couple
he's
to
pretty
work
confident in his 1,500, so he's fine with blind
That's an
challenging.
interesting. Yeah, it's an interesting spot from him.
Yeah.
And you have to wonder what's going through his head right now. Like, does he know why? He must have had a good reason, right? He thought it was wrong at first, but it passed the case that he gave it. Does that mean maybe that he just misread, or potentially it means he could have a misunderstanding of the problem itself?
Oh yeah,
right?
maybe something on his problem.
That's always the worst feeling. It happens to me sometimes as well. It's like I challenge somebody, and then it's like, your challenge was unsuccessful because they gave this answer, and you're like, hold on, that's actually not the answer that I thought it would be. And from that point on, you kind of know that you're wrong as well.
Yeah.
I'm gonna kind of toward the bubble.
Oh, looks like he's not challenging.
Okay, he's like, I'm gonna chill.
Yeah, not a big challenge fan.
All right, AC Rush on the bubble. Let's see if he's making any moves.
So he's looking at Egor's 250 right now. Yeah, not sure if he will find anything given that Egor resubmitted, but maybe he's seeing if there's an additional case he was missing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and AC Rush, I guess is also like.
Yeah, he wants to make sure he defends his position.
In the opposite spot, where it's not about kind of getting up there, but just making sure he doesn't fall down.
Yeah, and like sometimes taking away challenges is another strategy, right? You don't want somebody to challenge and go above
If
you,
someone's
so-
going to get that challenge and go above you, then
Yeah.
Yeah, he seems satisfied with that one.
As far as I can tell, I think almost everybody's looking through the 250s.
Yeah.
Ace Rush opened at 500.
I think. Oh wow, open the 500. Yeah, I think it's possible that as time goes on, as we get towards the end, people are kind of, the 250s are drying up as far as challenge opportunities.
Yeah.
So people will start to look at the 500, 1000. 250 definitely, the easiest one to read. Everyone's code is much shorter there.
Again, Marchin, he's currently in 5th place.
So it's looking at MJ, I think.
Anything sticking out of you guys?
I don't know. It's hard to read from here.
Yeah, interesting that he's staying on that page. Could mean that he's reading it
Yeah.
carefully to make sure he has it. Could mean that he's actually just kind of like on standby and working on the case for something else.
As a competitor, do you need to somewhat know most languages when you're looking at this?
Yeah, you have to be able to reason through it. Usually it's not too bad.
Most people use C++ or Java,
Right.
or like the vast majority.
Those are
use
kind of like
C++.
similar enough.
Yeah,
Even if you can't write it yourself, you can understand what they're doing.
So he's looking for some points
Oh,
to
he's
see if he
looking
can.
at 500s now.
7500.
And he only needs one challenge?
Yeah, he needs
That
one
looks right,
challenge to move up. The 500s I feel like are a little bit harder to challenge given that there's so many different approaches, so just working through them.
Yeah,
really
yeah,
Oh,
just
wow.
to even to think through that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I mean, we haven't seen a successful challenge yet, but at the same time, I'd personally be very surprised if all of these submissions went through. So, possible that people are just taking their time to make sure. Possible it's, it is tough to generate the cases against them too. So
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it looks like he's just going back and forth.
yeah.
Not too sure what he's looking for.
Just see if MJ Hoon is making any moves here. He's searching.
Okay. He's looking at Egor's 500.
Yeah, and it's an interesting spot too when you if you're trying to challenge a problem that you yourself didn't get, because on the one hand, obviously you probably you don't have the solution yourself, you don't have kind of the groundwork of how the code works, but probably obviously you've tried a lot of things, you might have a good sense of what doesn't work, and maybe you can see it, this idea that you dismissed, somebody else said, hey, let's see if I can sneak this in, and you might know exactly how to break that.
We're looking at Vessel right now, or so. He's looking at Merchants, I think.
So
Yeah,
coming
there's
up
not too
on
much action.
3 minutes remaining, this is the point I think where people are going to start to say, hey, this is time to move. I think Egor
Yeah.
especially,
All right.
as we discussed, he needs a challenge to move up.
Checking
And
in the tourist real quick.
he also almost has nothing to lose, right? Right now, if he drops a challenge, where does he fall? He's still in 6th place,
Yeah.
and everything to gain. So
All right. So it's a little
Tourist is
still.
looking at the source code.
yeah, I
Or
would like to
he's-
see. I would also like to see Vasil or MJ Hoon kind of go in more on some of the
Challenging.
the harder problems at 500 or 1000, right? Because you know that a lot of these submissions have to fail for you to make it into the top 4. So at some point, again, it's nothing to lose, everything to gain.
So it looks like Egor made it all the way down to the bottom and didn't find anything.
Yeah,
So it's
still,
not looking
still
right
looking
this
through
way.
250s.
So,
Hmm.
yeah, maybe he didn't find anything. Maybe everybody did do it correctly. We'll see.
I will
Let's-
say I'm going to be truly shocked if all 15 submissions, 14 submissions, if all of these pass, I would be amazed.
Especially when everyone was expecting a firefight at the end.
Yeah. We had last minute submissions and everything, people resubmitting,
Yeah.
Usually that's kind of the sign that there's going to be things moving. You can see on the status, all these, this person opening this person's problem, this
yeah.
person closing this person's problem.
Yeah.
Usually it's not something you pay too much attention to. I guess sometimes you don't
So it
want
looks
to all
like-
be on the same problem.
It looks like he's opening some 1000s now. Maybe he's just seeing anything obvious. But
Mm-hmm.
given that he didn't solve it himself, he doesn't know. Maybe he doesn't know quite what the correct solution looks like. So I think he's just skimming maybe just to see if he can find out how they solved it. Not necessarily looking for a bug. Yeah, there is only 1 minute left, so maybe.
But
there's not much action
it's
left.
even after this, it's still not over because someone may have failed the system test, correct?
Right.
Right.
Yeah. So we still need to run system tests after this, and then that'll run all the code against the full suite of test cases, and then we'll see if people will fail from that or not.
Yep. So up until now, they've really only just seen these 3 or 4 pre-tests. There's actually there's hundreds of test cases for each problem to
Yeah.
really kind of make sure they got it correct. And if they fail any one of those, they get a 0. So this is really, it's still very much the tentative scoreboard.
Looks
We'll
like
see.
everyone's pretty much done here.
Yeah, they're wrapping up. We'll see the system test actually pretty soon after this.
Yeah.
We'll get to see who made the top 4, who's going to the finals tomorrow. We'll also get to talk to a couple. We'll get to talk to Egor and Errichto actually. So we'll have them here after the match and get their thoughts. 10 seconds. This is the time to make
For
a
any
last minute
last-minute
challenge.
challenges.
Yeah.
The algorithm competition has completed. The system testing will now be processed and the results announced shortly.
All right, it looks like we have concluded this round, this algorithm semifinal round 1. As you mentioned, we will have the results. We should have the results shortly.
Yeah. We'll get to see how everyone did on the system tests. We'll get the slow reveal. As it looks, the 4 people slotted to advance: Tourist, Errichto, Umnik, AC Rush, all really, really top contenders. Shout outs as well to Marcin, Egor, Vasil, and MJ Hoon. Amazing job by them as well. Not an easy feat at all to make it to the finals.
Yeah.
I can say that personally because I didn't. But we'll see how the system test goes. And, still anyone's game, I think. Still a lot of chances for failures to cause people to move up or down.
Yeah. And we'll have Egor and Errichto over for an interview soon. You'll know when they're coming.
Great. So we'll go ahead and round them up, and we'll be back with you in about 2 minutes. So stick around. Attention, please. The algorithm competition system testing has completed. Turn your attention to the scoreboard display to view the final results of the competition round. All right, let's gather around. Let's gather around. Get on the floor right in front of the stage. And then we'll start the results. Let's check out the results right now. Here we go. And making their way to the algorithm finals, we have Tourist, Errichto, Umnik, and AC Rush. Congratulations and good luck in the next round.
Go ahead. All right, guys, we're back. We have with us Egor and Errichto, two of the contestants from today's semifinal round one. An interesting result as well because Errichto, you got second place, and then Egor, you were fifth, right?
Yes.
So first things first, how were the problems?
I like the problems. Maybe just because I advanced.
Yeah.
But so I focused on the hard problem and I managed to solve it. So
Right.
I'm happy about it.
Okay.
I also think the problem set was very interesting,
Okay.
and I enjoyed competing.
Cool. And I guess to get an interesting view as well, I'm curious to hear what you guys thought about the problems that you weren't able to solve. I don't know if you spent a lot of time on the 500.
So for me, I solved the two other problems, easy and hard,
Yeah.
and then I've just opened the medium one just to see if it could be easy, just if it could be solvable in a few minutes.
Right.
It didn't look so I switched to testing easy and hard, and it was a good idea because I found a mistake in my easy.
Right.
So I was able to resubmit.
And Egor, I think your situation was kind of similar as well.
Yes, but I think I decided to switch too late because otherwise I probably would be able to get more points with resubmitting.
Oh, on
my
the easy. Yeah, and I think it's interesting because I guess you two were the two contestants to resubmit your easy. And as a result, there were actually no fails on the easy problem. Everyone passed. Do you guys mind sharing kind of what were the corner cases that you missed with the easy initially?
So in the easy problem, you can't go all the time to the right, for example.
Yeah.
And if in one row you are in the first cell, the leftmost cell, and then, for example, you say that you alternatively go to the leftmost and rightmost cell,
Yeah.
then it's a mistake if you start in the first cell.
Right.
So I covered that for rows, but I didn't thought that it could also be a case for columns. If there is only one column, then you should do the same for the alternative move with one special if for the first move, if the number of columns is one.
Right.
So this was my mistake.
Was it
Okay.
similar for you? Or?
Actually, I noticed that you can get this, so I decided that if you have exactly one column, you can just transpose the table,
Yeah.
get some result, and then switch rows and columns.
Yeah.
But if you have one row and one column, so exactly one test,
Yeah.
I just would transpose my table all the time because I just
So you just call the same method and then
yes. So
I see.
I failed exactly one test.
Oh wow,
Submission.
okay. Interesting. Yeah, because you you had a very fast 250 submission at first.
I was like third, something like that.
Sure. That's fair. Yeah. So Taurus and AC Rush also very fast, and then I think you two both of
I
your
also have like 242.
242.
So
yeah.
right now I would have the best score, but yeah, it was wrong.
So we were kind of wondering that as well about some of the other fast submissions, Taurus or AC Rush, because obviously if you take only 5 minutes, 6 minutes on the problem, then it's easy to miss some of the corner cases. But as it turned out, it seems like everyone kind of survived through challenge phase and survived through system testing.
I guess everyone just like at some time decided to write the stress tests. And
Yeah.
It was
quite
quite
easy.
easy to do.
And the ones, right, sure. The ones who had it already, then they didn't have to do anything. That's fair. What were you guys doing, or what were you thinking throughout challenge phase?
Well, I hoped someone wouldn't test problem
Right.
truly. Also, Richter Submit gave me some boost, like someone else may
Some
have,
confidence.
yes.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, everyone did it correctly. So.
I also focused on checking out everyone's easy because hard looked like something with strong samples. I didn't understand medium very well. I didn't spend much time on that. So
Right.
and easy looked like something that you can make mistake. I knew that because I did that
Yeah,
myself.
because you did, yeah.
But yeah, on the other hand, it was possible to to stress test, and I think it will be different in the standard round because here we have the very top people, and they know what to do.
Right.
They make fewer mistakes and
we
they
were
know how
talking
to
about
test.
that too, right? Because if it's just a regular Div 1 or Div 2 online round, then there's a lot of mistakes that people here at TCO just don't make. Yeah, exactly. Cool. Awesome. Yeah, a couple more questions for you guys. Errichto, I know you competed in the marathon as well yesterday. I'm curious how you felt about how that went and maybe how that compares to today's
So
performance.
actually, I had bigger expectations about the marathon track rather than algorithmic track because in that one people are better than me in some marathon stuff, but some problems require algorithms. They require good knowledge of algorithms and speed. So I hoped for a problem like this,
Yeah.
but I just didn't do well. So
see.
the problem didn't match me, and I wasn't very good. So
Yeah.
I'm sour at the end of the leaderboard. Today I'm surprised because I'm one of weaker participants here, but I managed to advance.
That's funny. Yeah, and especially I think with marathon, it's kind of like a different. The problem style itself can affect the results.
Yes, a lot, especially because it's only a single problem.
For sure. Cool. And Yegor, I know you've competed in several TCOs before. In fact, you've actually won one in the past. So, how does this compare to what you were hoping for, what you were
Well,
expecting?
I missed last two TCOs, so I'm happy to be back here.
Yeah.
And well, going into the round, I hadn't that much hope to advance because like I'm a curiosity, stuff like that. But during the round, well,
Yeah.
as it was going, because maybe the medium problem, I knew right away that if you have like rectangle 2 times n, it's the number of ways to fit dominoes, it's just Fibonacci number. It's the problem that I know from my childhood. So I quickly got up on it and
see.
Submitted quite quick solution. So I hoped it would be enough, but unfortunately no.
Right. Yeah, that's always tough. Cool. Lewin, did you have any questions that you wanted to ask?
Were there any follow-up questions on the list?
Yeah. I mean, if you'd like to look at the list, please.
I guess I can look at some of them. Yeah, so I guess like you've been to like other on-sites before, so how would you compare this experience to like other on-site competitions? Either one of you can answer.
I wasn't in many of them. Actually, I think this year I was on more on-sites than in the whole my career before that. TCO is different from Google Code Jam and Facebook Hacker Cup because Topcoder hosts some regular rounds, so we are more familiar with the system. So it's a bit different. It's like a regular round, just more important one. While other systems, they change a lot and they are like new to us. And other than that, I think that Topcoder actually has the best, like not related to contest organization, like the hotel, venue, shuttles, things like that. So that's cool.
And I can second that because every other inside competition mostly is done in one day, so you like have competition and then celebration and that's all. But Topcoder is special in this regard because it's multi-day event. There's several rounds, so I like it most.
Cool. And yeah, lots of different contest formats too. I was going to ask actually, for both of you, we have semifinal 2 tonight. Obviously, you guys won't be in there, but do you guys plan to watch? Do you guys plan to to try the problems yourselves?
I'm going to. I think just trying solving some problems is fun, especially in late rounds where problems are hard and usually are interesting.
Right.
I would also follow the round.
Yeah.
Would watch like what Peter would do. Would root on him.
Yeah. It's always fun to, especially kind of with the screencast and everything. It's a different experience live, I'd say. Cool.
Do you have any favorites for semifinal 2?
Well, I would root for Peter.
Yeah.
So I think since he's the strongest here, there, I actually should root for him not to advance. So my chances in the finals would be good.
Errichto has some direct conflict of interest here.
No. I like him, so it's okay if he can pass. Just I hope he will not do well in the finals because then I will compete against him.
Cool. Any other questions, Lynn?
No, not really.
Okay, awesome. But yeah, thanks for coming on, and Errichto, good luck tomorrow.
Thanks for having us,
Thanks
and
for
thank
having
you.
us.
Great.
Bye.